Hello, this is Tara, and welcome to Tara's Mental Calibration. Disclaimers and trigger warning. I may talk about things you do not want to discuss. I may talk about things you don't want to look at within yourself. I may talk about things you don't want to see within your own relationships, and that's okay. I do highly recommend therapy. I am currently in trauma therapy myself. I am not a medical professional on any level. So use your own discernment, your own boundaries, your own thought process as to whether you want to continue listening. So, this past week has been quite interesting. This past week marked 42 years since my car wreck that I had when I was 10 years old. And it was quite an eye-opener. I recently talked about it for the first time in therapy. I've never really addressed it. I never addressed how I felt in the moment. I never addressed how I felt as a child going through it. I never addressed how I felt as an adult looking back on it. I actually felt a lot of sadness when I think about it because I see the memory and I see how strong I had to be as a 10-year-old. And I realized that there really wasn't a huge support system looking back on that. So I'm going to dive into it and I'm going to tell you what happened as a 10-year-old. I was swimming at a hotel that my mother worked at as a housekeeper. And my sister was coming to pick me up from the place so I could go home early instead of waiting on my mother to get off work. And when my sister came to pick me up, I can't prove that she might have been dabbling with drugs or liquor. The thought has always been there that maybe she did. And that's why, it was a traumatic experience for us both. I don't know if she was on drugs or if she had been drinking. I do know that my two older sisters, they did dabble a lot with drugs and drinking. When I got older, also as a child, I dabbled a lot in drinking. So it was definitely within our family system to do stuff like that to numb what we go through. So, you know, she pulled out into traffic and it was like a 4-lane street, you know, 2 lanes going in one direction, then there was a turning lane in the middle, and then 2 lanes going in the opposite direction. And when she pulled out, I almost felt like everything went into slow-mo. And I'm sorry if you're hearing my cat meow in the background. She wants to get my attention because I am doing my podcast. So she pulled out and it seemed like everything went into slow-mo, and there was a car that stopped and was getting ready to turn left. And she hit them going 35 miles an hour. And back then I was not wearing a seatbelt. It was not really taught to us to wear our seatbelts when we were growing up, nor was it part of the law like it is now to wear seatbelts. And if I had worn my seatbelt, I would not have hit the windshield. But since I was not wearing my seatbelt, I hit the windshield. And my sister hit the steering wheel and had a bruise on her neck from where the steering wheel hit. And before impact, I remember seeing the car and they were stopped. And I was telling her to stop. I was telling her that the car was stopped, telling her to stop the car. And she did not hear me or she didn't listen to me. I'm not really sure um, which one it was. And I remember seeing once I hit the windshield, I did not feel any pain in my face. I felt the impact, but I didn't feel pain. And I saw the blood. I pushed myself back onto the seat and I saw the blood splatter on the dashboard and on the seat. And I looked at my sister and I thought that it was just a scratch. I thought it was just a scratch. I promise you, I thought it was just a scratch. And I looked at my sister because she was driving my mom's favorite car, which was a Pacer. It was a blue Pacer. And I said, "Good going, dipshit. Now what's mom gonna say?" And she just stared at me and she didn't move. She just stared at me. And then I looked down on myself and I was drenched with blood. Like I couldn't even see my skin tone. I was covered with blood. Didn't realize I had, I literally remember seeing the blood splatter on the seat, but I didn't realize how much I was bleeding until I looked back down on myself. So in that few seconds, I had lost so much blood that I was covered with blood from my head, from my face. And I opened up my car door and we were on one of the inside lanes. So there was a full lane. I had to cross the street and there are these houses on the side. And I remember cars driving by. I remember getting honked at by one because I was freaking out so bad. I had to get out and go get help. My sister checked out. I don't know where she was at, but she checked out. I could not ask her for help because she was gone. I don't know if she was in shock. And like I said, I don't know if she was on drugs back then or if she had been drinking, but she had checked out. And she may have just been in shock. She may not have been on drugs. She may not have been drinking. But I had to get out and be there for myself. And there were adults standing around looking at the scene of the accident and just staring at me. Nobody reached out. Nobody said anything. These were fucking adults. If it had been, now this was back in 1984, so there wasn't cell phones like there is now. If there had been cell phones back then, they would have just been standing around recording it and not saying shit, not trying to get help, just trying to record it. Like they were just looking. And I crossed the street and the first thing that I did was knock on somebody's door. I left blood on their door because I knocked on it. Nobody answered the door. And so I kept running. I ran to the next house. And it was a little bit down the street. Like it was literally, it was such a big, busy street and the houses were so far apart. I was just running off of adrenaline. And I got to the second house, which was a little bit down the street, and these people had just got done installing white carpet in their house, and they took me in and they put me in their bathroom. And then I remember the lady being there and she put a towel on my face and she was like, "You're okay. You're going to be okay. You're all right." And her husband or her boyfriend, I don't know who it was, but it was the guy that lived with her, went and he left to go check on my sister. And the cops were called, the ambulance was called at that point in time. Mind you, it had probably been a good 10 to 15 minutes at this point. And so the lady left me in the bathroom. She told me to just sit there and not move. And I was told not to remove the towel. And as soon as she left me alone, guess what my 10-year-old self did? I removed the fucking towel and I looked at myself in the mirror and I could see how it had cut my forehead, pulled the skin all the way back onto my skull. I could see my skull. I could see my eye exposed, the whole socket. I could see that there was some glass still in my cheek. Half of my lip was cut off and half of my nose was cut off. And I was still profusely bleeding, like crazy bleeding. And I don't know how I didn't feel any of this pain. And I started freaking out because I saw it. I saw how bad it was. And the lady could hear me screaming. And she came back in and she was like, it's okay, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And she took me into the living room and she laid me down on her carpet. White carpet. I'm drenched in blood, And next thing I know, I'm laying there and my mom runs in and she's screaming, asking me if I'm okay, asking me where my eye is at. She thought my eye was gone. And I remember thinking in my head, I am getting love from my mother. I never saw my mom cry, like hardly ever. I hardly ever saw my mom be concerned about me like that. I never saw the love. And so in my head, I was thinking, this is a good thing because I am getting the attention and the love that I deserve. Now, keep in mind that when I'm doing good, I don't really get any kind of attention or praise or encouragement, but it took me almost losing my life to see any emotion towards me from my mother. And, I remember eating it up and thinking, oh my God, this feels so good. Now keep in mind, I'm very close to losing my fucking life and I'm thinking this is great. I'm getting love from my mother. This is wonderful. Nothing better could have happened today than this right here. And as a 10-year-old, I'm thinking in my head, this fucking accident was worth it to get this kind of love and affection from my mother. Now let that really sink in. As an adult looking back on it, it's like that's really fucking sad. But when you're a child and you're living through it, it doesn't seem that bad when you're raised in that kind of environment. This is why I have a hard time telling certain stories because people give me the, oh, and they're like, oh, that was bad. And it's like, no, really, it kind of wasn't because I lived through it and it was normal for me. So save the feel sorry for Tara shit for somebody else and don't feel sorry for it. Don't feel sorry for me. I am actually good. I've learned a whole lot when it comes to relying on myself. But yeah, it was kind of sad that I was only 10 years old doing that. So after that, I got packed into an ambulance, and from what I was told, my dad was there for a few minutes, and I saw my dad when I was getting on the ambulance. And he told me that he would meet me at the hospital, but he had to go get my sister out of jail, is what he told me. And it wasn't just because it was her fault. I think, looking back on it as an adult, like, the accident was her fault because she reared somebody else. And I think that that's just a whole legality. Like, if you are in the back and you hit somebody that is stopped, you are at fault. But why would they retain her if she wasn't on drugs and if she wasn't drinking or something like that? Like, why would they retain her? My dad had to go bail her out. I'm not really sure what happened. I was never told. I have wanted to, and I'm going to try to find out how I can pull, I'm going to see if I can pull any police records from back then. It would be great to know. And if I found that out, it would actually make sense to me a lot as to why my sister treats me the way she does. Because it went like, after that, I remember being really angry. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. They couldn't find my blood pressure. I barely had a pulse. I was in shock. when I got into the ER, the doctor asked me how many fingers he was holding up, and I was like, "Why are you asking me? You're the one with the degree." And my dad was like, "Just answer the fucking question." Like quit playing around and answer the fucking question. And I was, they had to put ice on my face. They numbed it for a couple of days because I had such a high fever and I had lost so much blood. They had to regulate my blood pressure. Luckily, I did not need a blood transfusion. And they did go in and reconstruct my face. They put plastic on my forehead. My forehead had shattered. They pulled my skin back over my forehead, and they put my cheek back together. They got the shard of glass out. They put my lip back together and my nose. And I had over 250 stitches in my face. And I was told that my forehead was going to be permanently discolored. And I was told that the hair on my head would not grow back because it was all dead. And lo and behold, by the powers that be, and me manifesting as a child of telling the doctors that's not going to happen to me, my forehead went to a normal color, went back to a normal color for me, and my hair grew back after being told that neither one of those things would happen, and it did. And looking at me now, I still have the scars. I have the scars on my forehead. I still have it on my face. And it almost looks like pillow creases. They're noticeable if you look or if I show them to you, but they're not so noticeable that you're going to pick them up like just by glancing at me or anything like that. When I got older, when I turned 18, I had seen the doctor that reconstructed my face, and I saw him again so he could see his work, and he told me to go back to him when I quit growing so he could possibly refine my scars. And he asked me if I wanted to refine my scars to where they were totally unnoticeable. And I told him I didn't want the operation, I didn't want the correction, because every day that I looked into the mirror, I reminded myself that I could have lost my life and I didn't. And there was a reason why I was here. And learning that at the age of 10 was phenomenal. It taught me to appreciate life. It taught me to appreciate my journey. It taught me to appreciate the fact that I could do something on my own, even in a fucked up environment that I was being raised in. And when I had the accident, I was starting a new school it was 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I had to start a new school, the fourth grade. In Kansas City, I went to a school called Santa Fe Elementary School. And I don't know if it's still there or not, but I remember I had a teacher named Mrs. Ward. And I remember her explaining to the kids not to look at me, not to laugh at me. I had something bad happen to me. I appreciated, like looking back on it as an adult, I actually appreciate that she kind of made them aware. But at the same time, starting a new school, I felt like the freak. And I know that started a lot of kids teasing me on every fucking thing that they could tease me on. Like the mean girls were, of course, that. There were, boys that were stupid boys. It's just that I worked through it as much as I could. Angels agree at that time. So, like going forward, I learned a lot from that. One, to be humble about life and realizing that I can endure um, a near death experience, and be okay. But it also showed me a lot about, like, over the years, looking back on it, how alone I truly was when it came to something so huge. And at first, I was like really angry at my sister. Like I would tell her things that it was her fault that I looked the way that I looked. It was her fault that I almost died, like it was her fault. Like I was 10. I was 10. But by the time I got into my 20s, I apologized to her for that. I apologized to her and I said it wasn't her fault that the accident happened. And I told her that I was grateful for the accident because it showed me so much about myself, and it showed me so much about how, people are really stuck on looks, like I don't consider myself to be an ugly person by any means. But when I was going through that and my scars were raw, people would just come right out and be, were you in a fight? Yeah, stupid. I was in a fight, and you should see what the other person looks like if you think I look bad. Like I was that asshole who would answer like that because people are fucking idiotic. And it just showed me a lot about how I could stand up for myself and I could set boundaries and still be proud of how I look as I'm going through a process and I was, growing as a person. And if my sister had been driving under the influence of anything that day, me forgiving her was like a knife stuck, probably, because she's never admitted that that's what she did. She never admitted anything behind it. There's one thing to say, I'm sorry that accident happened. But it's another thing to actually take accountability for the accident and say, look, I could have prevented that. And I'm really sorry. Here's my accountability. I was drinking. I was on drugs. Or, this is why this happened. This did not just happen because I didn't hear you tell me that a car was right in front of me stopped where I wasn't paying attention. She hasn't taken accountability for what actually happened. And she doesn't really take accountability for stuff like that. There's a lot of people in my family who don't take accountability for the shit that they put in because they look at it like, oh, you're being judgmental, you're downing me, you're making me look like the bad person. And it's like, no, you just need to be accountable for your shit. If you're gonna be really sorry about it, say why you're sorry. Say, why did it happen in the first place? Could it have been prevented? And accountability is not a strong suit in my family. So, I was glad. I've actually been taught accountability. Angels agree again, not just once, but twice. And, I'm actually proud of myself for the accountability that I take in my life. Watching my family showed me what not to be. Watching my family on how they dealt with stuff told me that's not the kind of person I want to be in this world. I want to own my mistakes. I want to let it be known. Yes, I did this. Like I have 3 DUIs myself. I'm not going to sit there and say it happened by accident. No, it happened because I was drinking and I'm really fucking lucky I didn't kill nobody else. At the time, I didn't care about myself. That's why I didn't add myself in like that. But, if I had killed somebody else or if I hurt somebody else, I would not have ever been able to forgive myself. And it's like, yeah, it happened, but I'm not going to say why it happened or how it happened. I'm just going to pretend that, I'm just not going to take accountability, sweep it under the rug. Everything is swept under the rug in my family. So, angels agree again. So it's something that I have actually, the more that I have healed in my life on different levels, it's like I have been labeled as the crazy one. I've been labeled as the touched one. I've been labeled as, oh, that Tara's mentally unstable. okay, when you really break it down, Tara is not mentally unstable because she realized and knows toxic is toxic, abusive is abusive, and getting help is exactly what is needed. What I think is fucking crazy is a person who is loyal to a predator, is not accountable for anything that they do. And once again, that's everybody in my family. And they run from healing. They run from growing. They want to stay in the toxic mindset that they are right. They're narcissistic. That to me is crazy. So I've had to like really get past so many things when it comes to how I look at myself. I've had to look at myself and say, oh my gosh, am I the crazy one? I'm the only one in the family who wants to do better. And I want to take them with me. And I want them to realize that what's going on is wrong and it's draining and it's slowly killing us. And, like we need to do better. And they're looking at me like, what? Why do you want to leave? Why do you want to go anywhere? This is where all the love is at. And if you hide our secrets, if you hide what we do, then you're going to get all the love in the world. You're going to get all the acceptance in the world. You're going to get all the loyalty in the world. It's like, what? Yeah, no, I'm not going to continue being hurt for that. So, so that's kind of where it's at. And I see how much I've grown. So all of this has been going on in the past week, you know? And I'm really proud of myself that I'm finally at a place where it doesn't hurt to think about the family I so-called lost. I don't feel like I lost anything. I feel like I'm gaining so much more. I'm gaining so much better in my life. I'm back in school. I'm in college. I'm volunteering. I'm around healthy people who have been through traumatic experiences like me. And I'm just really getting so much love. I'm getting so much understanding, and it's helping my growth. I've never ever wanted perfection from anyone. I've just wanted people to show up. I've just wanted consistency. I've wanted honesty. I've wanted the truth. But sometimes you can't get the truth and honesty out of people who want to continue living in their lie, and they want to continue covering other people's lies. So, it's just been a really beautiful thing. It's been really hard, but it's been really beautiful. The bloom, like I heard in a song today, healing feels like pain in slow motion, and it definitely does because you have to sort through it in order to get to the good part, you know. So, I'm feeling really, really, really good. And I'm going to be 52 next week. So, yay. I really didn't think I was going to live past the age of 30, and here I am. Seriously. So that is what I have for this week. If you want to email me, Tara's mental calibration at gmail.com, do that and I will message you back. I'm sending you a bunch of love, light, healing, and protection. And I hope you have a really great week. Bye.